Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to Inside Movies Galore. I'm your host for the evening, and today in the room we have a special guest with us today, and his name is Adam. Why don't you tell us your name for us so that we don't get it wrong?
I don't know it. Katie, do you know my name?
Oh, I know your name. The very famous Adam LeHouillier.
LeHouillier, that's right. Thank you, Katie.
So I want to welcome you to Inside Movies Galore since you haven't been with us yet. So welcome.
Thank you. This is fun. I've listened to your guys' podcast a couple times recently to brush up, and you guys are fun. I'm excited to yak with you.
Cool. So the first question that I'm going to ask is, how did you get into filmmaking, and where are you from?
Well, I'm from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, originally. I guess how did I get into it that's a big one. I've always been interested in writing and drawing, I guess, a lot when I was a kid. And I just saw things in a visual medium when I told stories. And I always knew I wanted to make movies, but we didn't have a camera, so it just didn't seem realistic.
Okay.
But when my sister was born, I was 13, and finally the family decided, all right, that's worth getting a camera for. Document her, so they bought the camera and I stole
it. All right. So Katie, why don't you ask him your first question?
Sure. Well, this kind of goes a little bit off of sort of what you've already been talking about, but what sparked your love for movies, and what do you think that we, as part of a movie-loving community, which we all pretty much are, what can we do to help spark that love in other people that we come in contact with?
Go to the movies. I mean, if there's somebody who isn't into movies or is, but they don't they haven't found a love for it yet, just, hey, there's a movie I think you might enjoy. Why don't we go this weekend and take it? I feel like I had an uncle in particularly when I was younger who took my brother and I to movies, and he had a VHS collection, which when I saw that at his house, I was like, oh, it's not only cool to watch movies, but collect them and rewatch them and be excited about them. So I think it's important to have people around you who expose you to things like that. And you can never, you never know what people are going to latch onto. People might get into music after they get into movies, or they might get into painting, or all kinds of things that aren't art at all. But I think exposing people to stories is important, because I think that's in a lot of ways how we learn how to live our own lives in a lot of ways.
Sure.
Okay. Was there a particular time or event that helped you recognize that filmmaking would be more than just a hobby for you?
Good question. I mean, there's a story my mom tells which was long before I could really comprehend what was going on. But I remember watching Flashdance when I was a kid. Have you seen Flashdance before?
Yes, I have.
Oh, okay. You don't sound too excited about that.
I'm not excited or anything. Probably you're hearing a little bit of my voice cold that's still here. So
it's a good cold. It sounds good.
But, it gives you very sexy rasp.
Yeah. Like Jennifer Tilly over there. Well, she doesn't have got a different kind of weird voice, but
oh, come on,
Kathleen Turner, Jessica Rabbit. That's who we're looking for. That's who I'm looking for. I'm into that. So anyway, we watched this movie, and I was probably way too young to be seeing this movie. In fact, I've never actually seen it as an adult, but I watched it as a child. I might have been, I don't know, 5. I'm sure my mom would be happy to correct that math, but I was young and I saw it, and the end came, and I was crying at the end. And it didn't make any sense to them because it was a happy ending, and it was just, I guess, a nice story. But she asked, "Why are you crying?" And I said, "Because it's over." And and when I look back on that, I'm like, I just wanted to be watching. I just wanted to be told a story. So I don't know. That's a moment probably before I really knew. There are plenty of movies that came along throughout my entire life that made me realize, okay, I love this. Yes, I do love this. Let me keep going. But but that's an old story.
Now, from what I understand, before we get into talking about your latest feature or whatnot, this was actually not your first film, correct?
You might be right about that. Katie could possibly confirm that. I mean, I've made a lot of films, a lot of short films. I've made documentaries. I've spent the majority of my time focusing on writing. But at one point when I was 17, I felt like I was ready to grab the camera and not just make a short, but actually go make a full-length horror film. And I didn't really have much direction. I certainly didn't have a real script at that point. I had notes jotted down as to maybe what we would do next, but we certainly didn't know who the killer was going to turn out to be until the day we shot the final scene. But that made it exciting for us to make it, and it made for a funny story. And yeah, it's a horror movie called Guts on the Ceiling, by the way.
Still remains to be the only movie I've ever acted in, so there's that.
True? That's true.
This is true. Yes, I have yet to be featured, although Trauma is interested in putting me in a movie, so we'll see. But
it's only a matter of time for you with those connections and your talent. I'm sure, and you're gonna have a blast doing it.
I hope so. I hope so.
You know,
I had a blast doing Guts on the Ceiling, so
yeah, that was
can only go up from there, right? It was a great time, and that is honestly what has kept me. Like I said, when it comes to the backslide, I've been waiting for that movie for 20 years, literally, because I knew it was going to happen at some point. Just based on what you were able to put together back in high school, I knew you were going places, and I was just excited when, I finally got to watch one of your movies on the big screen. So I've been following along.
You and me both. Thank you so much. It was really exciting that you were able to make it there and put together a review for it, and then put this together today with David. Like, this is very exciting and very cool. It's been a really.
I'm so happy to do it and support a fellow artist and friend.
And Katie has been podcasting with me for the last year or so. So we've gotten to know each other through the talking about film and whatnot. So and I realized how much growth that she's had describing films. So I invited her to come on board as one of my editors. So it just happened to be right place, right time. So that she could, get word out on your film.
Yeah, thank you. And that's cool. And the two podcasts I listened to that you guys did recently, I listened to The Shape of Water, which I thought was really great. I enjoyed that. And then I listened to one that was on one of my favorite horror films, which is Poltergeist.
Ah, yes.
And you guys go around the table right in the beginning, and you're like, "Hey, who's seen this before?" Everyone's like, I never did. And I'm like, "Come on, this is one of my favorite horror movies." And then one person's like, "Yeah, I saw it before. It was fine." Actually, I think that was Katie. She's like, I saw it at a sleepover. Whatever.
Yeah.
I'm like, damn, that's one of my favorite horror movies.
Well, and that's what I love about the podcast, because it's forcing me to really sit down and pay some close attention to some films that I just haven't given my time to.
Oh,
I mean, there's so many films out there that I haven't seen, and anybody that knows me knows that I run a mile a minute and I don't stop moving, because when I do, I fall asleep. And so watching movies has been kind of hard for me, in terms of like being able to stay focused and like watch more than one movie in a day or something. So being on the pod has really forced me to sit down, and movies that I might not, with that precious time that I have, I might not sit down and watch Poltergeist, because I'll dismiss it as whatever, it's been seen, it's been done, past. But for me, it was important to sit down and watch some of these, and really put some thought to them and learn from them.
And being able to listen to others' opinions about it and be able to run with that conversation. It's myself.
It changes the way I see the films after we talk about it, for sure. And that's why I'm always so excited to get other people in on the discussion. And I would love at some point for us to have a discussion about the backslide, because I'd love to hear other people's take on certain things. And I've been surprised on certain films too, films that I've really liked. I think Turbo Kid did not have the reception that I expected it would for how much I like that movie. So you know, it's just neat to hear people. Yeah, it's neat to hear people's perspective.
Maybe Turbo Kid is your Poltergeist.
It could be. It could be.
See, like, yeah, like if you miss it when you're coming up, like I'll tell you this, like, you know, The Backslide is a satire, you know, in many ways, and I consider myself a student of comedy in a lot of ways, but there's some of the biggest, you know, avenues that I just wasn't really exposed to, or I didn't expose myself to until later. Like, for instance, I didn't see Young Frankenstein for the first time until 6 months ago.
Sure.
I watched that and I'm like, okay, this is
Frankenstein.
Frankenstein, yes. Yeah. So that was the one time I'd seen it. This was back in October. Every October I watch nothing but horror movies all month. And that one I was kind of cheating. It's not. It's a comedy, but anyway, the point is, sometimes you need a community like this, or you need others to expose you to things that, you know,
exactly, and
people you care about or share the same interests really have the ability to turn you on to something that could elevate your own viewpoint, or at least just entertain you for 2 hours. You know what I mean? Like,
absolutely.
Alrighty, so
that actually sort of brings me to my next question. If I go ahead with this one,
okay.
And you're obviously a collaborator, people to work with. So, how have you found the people that are on your team or making the Backslide, and how have you kept the relationship with those people strong?
That's a great question. So, you know, not everybody I've worked with on the Backslide is in my life regularly. In fact, most are not. You know, most of them are actors, and a lot of them I met while auditioning people for the project. But it's interesting when you put yourself out there and you put your work out there, people, you know, the right people just start to get magnetized to you and to the project. And, you know, that doesn't just happen overnight. And in the beginning, especially with my main cast, I really made an effort because I didn't know how long this would take to make. You know, I hoped it would be a year or something like that, which seems like a lot, but I hoped it would only be that or less. But, you know, I really made an effort to, I guess, just form a bond with everybody, because you're in a relationship with these people that you're working with regularly. Like my 2 lead actors, my 2 or 3 main supporting characters, like they had enough scenes where, and I couldn't shoot them all up front and then just let them go. So sometimes I was like, all right, well, hey, you want to hang out this weekend? Let's get to know each other more. And also that I felt like that helped. You know, we could talk either about the movie or just whatever they were passionate about. You know, like we would go see music shows or see comedy shows or things like that. And then some of these people actually became genuine friends, and I'm incredibly grateful for that, because they're really great people. And, you know, I hope to work with them again. But yeah, I mean, it's a relationship, and you have to respect that, and you have to respect their time. You know, that's really important. You know, because they're people just like me, and they don't really owe me any more than I owe them. So if you want it to go well, you got to be nice and create a fun work environment and respect each other.
Okay.
I'm totally taking notes on that over here, because I'm embarking on a creative endeavor as a producer for burlesque shows, and it's very similar in terms of, you know, my cast is my crew of people, the dancers that I have in my shows, and the people that I lean on to put together a production. And yeah, I agree with you about keeping those bonds strong and respecting their time, and just being able to create something for me that's beyond just, you know, we're doing this so we can get paid, because it's really not about that. It's about creating something bigger, and you know, probably never getting paid what we're worth, you know, but doing it for the passion of doing it. And definitely respecting those people, and realizing that I wouldn't have these shows and any amount of success from these shows without those people. So it's such a give and take relationship for sure.
A big part of that too is casting, I guess, or in your case, finding the right partners, right? Or whatever it is. Like in my case, I did a lot of the major roles in production, but finding the right partners who, you know, get the mission. You know what I mean? Because
Right.
the mission ultimately will become larger than any one component, even larger than you who gave birth to it. You know, like,
Right.
you know, the backslide's beyond my grasp at this point. It's not, you know, as much me as is in there. A lot of it is up to chance and team effort and circumstance.
And
And
what the actors and actresses are able to do in order to put forth the vision that you started them out to
right. Well, a big part of directing, I think, is putting the right people in the role and then getting out of their way. You know,
Sure.
if they show up to that audition and they, you know, they read the lines, they get the lines, and then also they can take my direction. If I in an audition, it's common that I would say, okay, why don't you try it this way? Or, hey, this is what you're going through right now. Now give us another reading and see if they can take the direction, because you'll know later on, you know, you need somebody who,
Right.
if you're running the show, you need to know that they're going to do what you're asking.
Right.
But also you want to know that they get it inherently, because it's okay if they're not the right fit. But if you choose to put them there anyway and they're not the right fit, you know, you might find some trouble.
Absolutely.
You know, like in a lot of cases, like even in a romantic relationship or in a partnership or a roommate situation or whatever it
Yeah.
is. Like, yeah.
Couldn't agree more.
So,
Yeah.
what attributes that make that can help make you a good filmmaker, and what do you do to foster them?
What do I do to foster being attributes that make me a good filmmaker?
Or help make you a good filmmaker? I mean, sometimes you're a filmmaker and you don't feel like you're doing as much as you think you should be able to do. You know?
Right. Well, I mean, I guess patience. Patience is such a big one. It's the same as running a business, I think. You know, and I mean, you have to just put the right players in front of you and then let them go far enough to make mistakes. You know, don't get in front of them and over micromanage, I guess, or over direct if you're on a set. You know, put the people in front of the camera who can do the job that you hope and think they can do, and then be patient enough to let them do it, because really they're the other half of what I wrote on paper. You know, that's only half of it. Even though I spent a year writing the script for the backslide, and it's common that I've spent a year writing a script for, or, you know, writing past scripts that I've written, still, that's just half of it. Because once you get on that set with those actors, they are the flesh and bone and things, everything you hear, like, you can't see the word on the screen. You know, like, the actors have to embody the word. So I think it's very important to be patient with them and, you know, just try to make sure that you give solid direction and be honest. Like, you really have to be honest about what you want. That's important. I mean, that's one thing. Also, never give up on your craft. Never give up working on your craft, because I don't think anybody who's successful thinks that they've figured it all out yet. You know?
Sure.
I'm constantly, I started a new screenwriting book yesterday, one that I missed, you know, while I was reading most of my screenwriting books. And it's one of the most famous, popular screenwriting books out there by an incredible teacher of screenwriting. I'm not above that, just because I've been writing my whole life and I've now made a movie. Like, there's no end to the learning. I'm looking to be inspired at all times. And there's many people out there who can teach me something. You just gotta be willing to listen and let it in, you know?
I love that, you know, and I can relate to that as well. For me, it's all about staying humble, because as soon as I think I've got it, I've lost it.
Yeah,
You know,
there's like a line.
that constantly, yep.
Yeah,
Got to keep chasing that, you know, that next bit of knowledge or that next level piece of awareness or whatever it is. Yeah, I totally can relate to that.
mm-hmm.
And that brings me to my next question that, and we kind of touched on this, that films evolve through the creative process and sometimes most dramatically in the editing process.
Mm-hmm.
It's often really hard to reconcile the difference between what we desired and what we achieved. And how have you encountered this, and how do you move through it?
Yeah. I mean, many, and I would agree, many would call editing the final stage of writing. You know, I mean,
Sure.
it's basically writing again. Because to me, writing is you get all the stuff out on the paper, but then you rewrite it. Like that's really the writing.
It's almost like directing it again.
Yeah, absolutely. You're looking at the pieces in front of you. So when I'm writing, you're looking at all the words, and then it's like, ooh, that's flat, or oh, that's not funny, or oh, that's not interesting, or oh, that one's great, that one's staying in. Whatever it is, it's the rewriting. So I consider editing very similar to writing, and I'm passionate about editing. I love editing. And now you're looking at all those pieces. And
you have edited most of your productions, correct?
Yes, that's correct. I mean, I've had a few projects out there along the way that I've collaborated on with people.
Sometimes filmmakers go out and hire editors to go and do their work.
I've heard that.
It all depends on what you know and what you don't know, you know. So.
Oh, of course, no, and I, you know, sometimes I'll work on a small project where it's not, you know, produced by me. You know, where someone will say, "Hey, we need a director. Hey, we need somebody to shoot this," and then they'll bring on an editor or something like that. And honestly, if you get the right components in place, you'd be surprised at the outcome. Sometimes it's really great. Sometimes it's, ooh, there was lack of focus, or, you know, you never know. So with me, with this project, because it was a long time coming, like Katie said, you know, like I've been working up to this one for a long time just so I could now make more regularly, you know, like I had to learn a lot. And a big part of it was, you know, do as much of the things on, you know, embody as many of the roles as possible that I had to do, and just be okay with the fact that, all right, I can't afford to hire a director of photography. I can't afford to hire an editor, but you know what? I enjoy those things, and I'll do it. Otherwise the project won't go. So I do it. And I like editing. I've been editing the majority of my projects, like you said, you know, for many years, since college and before that. I edited Guts on the Ceiling by plugging 2 VCRs together, you know. it's all the same in the end. It's you piece it together to serve the final vision with whatever you have. And yeah, I mean, and with comic timing, like with The Backslide being a comedy, like comic timing is very important, you know, as much as it is in the writing, to the performance, to the direction, to then the final edit and music cues and things like that. Like comic timing it's so important to cut at the right moment, and like one frame this way or that way and the joke is flat. So, you know,
I thought you did an amazing job with that in The Backslide. That was one of the things that really stood out to me. Just how, I guess for lack of a better word, how professional it looked. You know, being that this is an independent film, we see independent films all over the board. And I thought in terms of that comedic timing, it was there. And, you know, again, I don't make films, so I don't know if it mostly had to be there in the directing or the editing, or if it was all sort of a combination, but I thought you really did nail it for sure.
Thank you. I mean, it does help in the directing, really. You know, you want to get coverage. I guess that's a tip for filmmakers out there. Like, don't just aim the camera at your actors saying the lines and then move on to the next thing. Like, you got to cut to the person you're talking to reacting, or cut to the thing in the room that they're talking about, you know, or like that's coverage. So, I mean, that's one thing I tried to get a lot of, was just constant people's faces going, huh? Eh?
There was great facial expressions in the movie too. Definitely.
Just constantly cut to someone thinking whatever just happened was ridiculous, and that's the exclamation point on the joke, you know?
Right.
So most of the questions that we've asked has been more towards you as being a filmmaker yourself. This next question is going to be about the challenges in getting started on the backslide, or how many have you faced more challenges in getting started on the project and continuing it to its end?
So getting started is the hardest thing, because you're up against your own mental blocks, I think, first. Like, you know, I think our brains are wired to look for what's going to stop us from accomplishing something. And I think that's in us. as a good thing, because then we try to figure out how to get around that. But many people stop at that. You know, they hit that in their brain and they're like, oh, it's hard.
Which is why wouldn't you agree that you should always do post-production first?
I would absolutely agree.
I
When's your book coming out?
know a lot about films. I've talked to a lot of filmmakers, so it's neat talking to each filmmaker. And
yeah, and I can tell you guys have talked to filmmakers before. These are really good questions. You're, I mean, I love talking about myself normally, and this is cranking it up to 11. So,
well, good. We want to hear some good stuff, you know, and give our listeners something, you know, different to hear. And like, honestly, the questions that I'm asking you are really, for me, I think as an artist, there's things I want to know, things, you know, that one creator is asking another creator. And, you know, I think your answers have been great so far. And I wanted to know.
This is your first real interview with a director yourself, correct?
Yes, it is. Yeah, for me, definitely.
In a sense, it's like practice.
Yeah, I've listened in on a lot of them, but yeah, to actually ask the questions. Well, and just knowing Adam like I do, that I tailor-made the questions specifically based on what I wanted to hear him talk about.
well,
so I'll ask you this. In terms
of, should I answer the question first about getting started?
Oh, did you? Oh, I thought you did. Sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sure
I'm excited. Clearly.
Too. I got a little. Okay, so getting started on this thing, and I was talking about mental blocks. Like, you know, I mean, there's a lot of people who come out to LA or who make a big leap of faith or make a big, you know, they think putting themselves in the arena means they'll win the fight. But once you get in the arena, that's when it begins. And I think this town eats up a lot of people, and towns like it, New York, wherever people go to do big things that a small amount of people are successful at, you know, is because they get it and not enough of their inside decides that it's up to them and they got to do it. And, you know, I've been out here now for over 10 years. The backslide took me going on 5 years since we had our first shoot. It was the end of May of 2013. I had our first shoot, and I wrote for a year up to that. And I cast for a couple months or whatever before that first shoot. And we had our table read in there and everything. But, you know, the 4 years leading up to that, while I was in LA, I was struggling hard. I mean, I had a day job, still do to this day. I think it's important to have a backup plan. Like, money's not just going to appear because you believe it will. No. You know, or you're not just going to suddenly, you know, Spielberg's not going to call one day, like, and go, hey, I heard you came to LA. That's cool. Like, that doesn't happen. You know, you got to come out here. You got to eat shit. Can I curse on this thing?
Yeah,
you can.
You got to come out here and you got to find a job. You got to find a place to live. You got to keep writing every day if that's what you're passionate about. In my case, I kept writing, and I was scared. I tried to, you know, I think what helped me is I used the writing as a way, you know, as therapy for me. Like, I would put things I was scared of into the script in one way or another. And I would help friends on their projects. I always feel like that's important too. If you see somebody who's got an idea, you say, tell me about that idea. How can I help you? And I'm sure I wasn't always great at that. I hope I've gotten better at it, because the amount of help I've gotten, especially on the backslide, is you can't put a price on it. Like, I can't get in front of the camera and, well, okay, I did that in one scene, but for the most part, you can't get in front of the camera, act while you're shooting, while you're directing, expect it to make any sense or look any way decent where people can see it. Like, you need to have some people around you eventually to help. And my whole crew, for the most part, was just great friends that I've built up since moving out here, and asking them how I can help them, and just trying to be a decent person and being a good friend and offering favors where I could. And then before you know it, you know, this script, The Backslide, was my 10th feature that I completed. I'd started a couple other ones along the way, didn't finish them, but this one I finished. And right out of the gate, I'm like, you know what? It's just people talking. Like, I can figure out how to shoot this. Kevin Smith did it. You know, Robert Rodriguez did it, and he had action sequences. You know, like, Ed Burns made The Brothers McMullen. It's just the family talking in the house, and every now and again they go for a walk around New York. Like, you know, like, these movies were all made with no money. It's people talking. And I'm like, all right, well, how do I make it an Adam LeHouillier movie where it feels like me? And that's another part of it. You got to find your voice. You just got to keep writing and keep making stuff, make things that don't work. You know, you look at it and you're like, ooh, that just doesn't really feel like me, or it didn't teach me anything. And that in itself taught me something,
And
you know? So with this one, I just had the script ready. I'd written enough. You know, I'm not getting any younger, and I'm like, this one I can make. There's no explosions. It's people talking. If I get good people who can deliver the words and aim the camera at them, we can figure it out. Everything else is just details. So I started moving, and there were a lot of people who told me I was nuts. They still did. They still did 3 years later, which by then they absolutely should have. But it's a mental block. You got to decide you're ready, and you got to work on your craft to the point where you are confident in it, I believe.
Okay. And I guess that leads up to our next question. How much did you have to sacrifice on this film in terms of financial and other restrictions?
Well, it's hard to say in some ways because, I mean, in a lot of ways, the production of this movie very much overlapped / paralleled my life. You know, I mean, a lot of it was shot in my apartment, or was shot in a friend's apartment, or shot in another friend's apartment, you know, or something like that. So, like, I mean, to me, the most valuable thing beyond money, which I did not have a lot of, I mean, shout out to the people who submitted to or pledged to my Kickstarter, which was great, but it was very small in the scheme of a feature. Like, I did, you know, this was made for an incredibly small amount of money that kept flowing in because I had a day job, you know, for the most part. But I'd say the biggest strain is, well, not only internal stress and anxiety that it might not finish, or it might not turn out the way I want, or someone might quit the movie, or I might die, or, you know, all these honest.
Anyone drop out as you had feared?
Any what?
Did any of your actors drop out as you had feared?
Good question. Yes, they did. But maybe when you watch the movie, you won't know, because I'm a great editor.
Yeah, I often find when I'm interviewing a lot of the independent filmmakers, they always have people who either have dropped out or just never showed up, or this and that, and you know, it's all, you know, it's all on what the actors can and can't do, and
you have to ask a lot of people, you know, especially when you have no money, because people are looking. People want to get what they're worth, you know, and me too. Right now, what I'm worth is negative thousands and thousands.
Find people that oftentimes they're looking for stardom when you're just that stepping stone, you know?
Yeah. And I mean, believe me, I wish everybody the best who contributed on this or any project I've ever worked on. I will never forget a second of time or effort somebody has given me over the years. So if anybody listening to this has ever acted for me in a college film, or acted for me in a high school movie like Katie, you know, or done something in LA like a short, or now The Backslide, like, I never forget any one of those people, no matter how small the role was, because none of them are small. I need them all, and they're all in the final, they're in there, you know. So I'm grateful. But I guess what I was trying to get at is, I think the biggest strain is it's on relationships. So going back to Katie, what you were saying earlier, or what we were talking about, is, I mean, you really, you got to form great relationships with people, you know, like, and maybe I learned that partially by working in sales and in management for many years. Like, you know, we're all just people, you know, we need to respect each other, and we need to, you know, we need to want to be there. If they don't want to be there, they'll leave, you know, and it doesn't matter if the script's really good. Eventually they won't think it's that good. Eventually they're like, well, it ain't this good. I'm out of here, you know? But you know, thankfully we figured out all those things. But, you know, like I said, most of my crew were my friends, and I had to pull a lot of favors. And, you know, friends have their own lives. They're raising children. They're in relationships. They got their own jobs. When the weekend comes, they want to mow their lawn or chill the fuck out, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I can relate. I can totally relate. And I think for me, that's one of the challenges that I've been up against in general, is finding people whose enthusiasm matches mine. in terms of being willing to stay up until 3 in the morning to do this thing that we're doing. Or, I had a show last night and I walked in the door at 8 o'clock and I didn't walk out until 1:30. I mean, that's a full work day that I put in, at the bar running a show. And, my performers just have to show up and perform and then they're done. And I'm so grateful for that. But there is so much behind the scenes that goes into it. And finding people that are willing to be enthusiastic about that and go kind of above and beyond and stay up till 3 in the morning, and really put that extra effort in, or do this weekend after weekend or whatever. And those people are few and far between. So when I find them, I hang on to them, because I think it's great to find people that match our enthusiasm level, or sort of see our vision in the same way and are as willing to go after it.
Yeah, that's right. And I mean, Katie, you and I were briefly talking about Billy Madison as a comedy that you and I both share that we love.
Yes.
I'll watch any Sandler movie, and for better or for worse, because oftentimes it's worse, especially these days. But he's always got the same people appearing here and there, and then he'll take chances with certain people. Like he'll be like, "All right, well, Jennifer Aniston, how about you be in this one?" Like, you know what I mean? But you'll always he's comfortable. He's having a good time. He's making the thing he wants to make, and he's got the right people around him. And
every so often he makes that poignant film where you'll just remember him, and it's kind of neat watching Adam Sandler films from time to time.
Well, and that kind of brings me to my next point, which I was wondering about, because I thought that, Adam, your comedy points in the backslide were really good. Like, talking about Adam Sandler, he kind of has his own brand of comedy, if you will. And knowing you and sort of knowing your sense of humor, I thought the backslide was so your brand of comedy. And I wondered if you had any challenges around coming up with original ideas for the film and having it really be your voice, your comedic voice, and not look like someone else's.
No, I don't think so. The biggest challenges would be maybe a reaction from an actor or somebody saying, "Wait a minute, Adam, nobody would talk like that."
Sure.
And when I get that, I'm like, "You're right. I'm on track. We're making this movie. I'm not making the movie you've seen." Now, granted, I have a lot of influences, in comedy and all kinds of art, stand-up comedy, drama, horror, whatever it may be. But I think the best ones don't really make you think, "Oh, this feels like another thing." Because if the second that thought is in your brain, you're like, well, now you compare, now you can't compare to your influences. I know I can't, I know I can't. And what's funny is Adam Sandler was in town the night that I was showing my movie, The Backslide, in Milwaukee.
Wow.
He was there. I was competing against Adam Sandler, and you came, Katie. So thank you.
I did. Wow. That's how cool I am, just so you know.
Yeah. But that is a big part of the writing, and then you got to see that through. Like when I wrote it, I was like, look, I just got to unlock my brain and let just nonsense fly out, and then I can start to hone it in, and then that leads all the way even into the editing. And I think for the most part, I was able to hone in a lot of the things I wanted, but really, I think that starts with having total freedom of your creative mind first, and doing it in a safe way where you don't feel embarrassed or shy about it. And I think that's why writing is such a great avenue for artists. Like, even if like, let's say you're a painter or you run a burlesque show, like, have a journal or write poetry, write poetry, or do something that allows you to really unlock your brain in a way where you won't be judged, or what I mean. Like, you write it down, and if it makes you laugh and you get it to the best point it can be, then you bounce it off somebody. And you're like, all right, what happens to you when you read this?
Well, there's such value in getting the ideas out of your head and onto paper. I find there's something therapeutic for me in that. when it goes from just an idea, when it's swimming in my head, it's just an idea and it's not necessarily tangible reality. But when I get it down on paper and it's there and I can go back to it, or I can show it to someone else, or, just having it as a reference point, it changes things up. I mean, for me, I have ADD, so I'm like all over the place. And if I don't write it down, sometimes it will go away. Like I had last week when I sent you my movie idea. I thought I have to get this down on paper, physically put it down somewhere so it exists. And I chose to share it with my friend who's a filmmaker because, why not? But yeah, I totally see the value in the writing piece. And I find that when I'm struggling, I often have to put pen to paper, no matter what I'm struggling with, even if it's, something emotional. Like just writing it down really helps to change my perspective on it.
Well,
totally.
And one of the things, me being a writer, Jonathan Livingston Seagull, or the guy who wrote that book, he wrote once that every time you dream something or think of something, write it down, because 10 to 20 minutes later, you might not remember that to its detail.
Mm-hmm. There was a class I took in film school in college where it was called Dreams in Film or something like that. And we were directed to have a notepad and a pen by the bed. And if we ever woke up, like right when we wake up, it's, hey, what's on your brain? What's that weird thing in that deep level of your brain that you'll forget in 5 seconds?
Yep.
And we wrote it down. And then the idea was by the end of the course, you make a film. Either about an old dream or about a dream you're currently having or something that just feels dreamlike. But dreams tap into such a deep state. And I think thought just in general is such a fleeting thing that if it ignites your heart, you got to write it down right away. Cause I know that feeling too. And it ain't good when a day later goes by and you're like, you know what? I had an awesome idea yesterday. And I couldn't give you one word about what it was.
Right.
Yeah.
So
I feel that from hour to hour in a day. What was that awesome thing I was just thinking about?
And it's a shame. It's a shame because I mean, if you wrote them all down, and let's say at the end of a month you have 100, now you can go, all right, what are the top 5?
Yeah.
And then you can spend the next month taking those top 5 and working on them until one emerges as something that is incredibly special and means a ton to you and stands out in your voice, and no one else could have ever just sat down and said, let me make up something today, because that came from such a deep, weird place that you didn't filter,
So
that's a great way to look at it.
So did living in LA influence your progress while filming this film?
My progress?
Yeah, while you were filming, did living just specifically in LA or influence?
Well, influence your process, how you made your film.
The process.
Yes.
I'll say this: it influenced a ton of a lot of things. Yes, absolutely. I mean,
would you say that the location that you filmed in?
Actually, yeah. I mean, it was all shot run and gun in Los Angeles. For the most part. I mean, there's a couple shots that crept their way into the final cut, to enhance, give shout outs to people back home. But for the most part, yeah, it was all shot here. And I will definitely say that, this, I mean, I hope I continue to grow and, make better and better films. But this one at this point in my life feels like my LA story.
Okay.
This movie in my own weird upside down way, I let realities bounce off me and be repeated, and I'm like, okay, well, I'm seeing these things, let me turn that into a joke, and be honest about it. And this movie's just about it's as much about a relationship between two people who can't figure out how to love each other as it is about me learning to love where I am, whether it be geographically, like Los Angeles, or where I am in my life, and owning my own truths and who I am. So yeah, my relationship with Los Angeles is definitely at least beneath the surface of this movie. It may creep up to some people, but you know, for me, it's rooted in there.
Cool.
Sure, makes sense. What would you say was the most important lesson that you had to learn that had a positive effect on the film, and how did that lesson happen?
That had a lesson that I learned before we finished.
At any point, yeah, something that was in a positive, because I know a lot of people can learn lessons through like bad shit that happens, but I'm curious, you know, what did you learn from something positive that happened, and you know, what that was?
Okay, well, I mean, I can put, I don't know. I mean, a lot of things come to mind there. I mean, I could certainly go to the negative, but I won't call it a negative, because if something happens that's negative and you go, okay, well, that's negative, and then you just like let it,
Something you can learn from.
you let it ruin you, then you've lost.
Sure.
So for me, there's been, I'd rather call those challenges or areas of opportunity. That's the leader in me. That's the guy who's read all the management books. But so, you know, like we said before, like if someone left the project, you know, I then have to become a writer again. I'm no longer a director or a producer in that moment. Now I have to go back to being a writer and figure the fundamentals out of that story, you know, and how it affects not just the storyline of that character, but how that character touches other characters, and how jokes are tied together from that character that touches other characters, and how locations are done. And, you know, it spans out to a lot of things. But yeah, I mean, I've had to rewrite things, and now I look back and I'm like, you know, I thought it was over. My initial instinct was, well, that's the end of the movie. It's done. You know, it's over. But to then to take a breath and talk to somebody, it's just always so important to bounce something off of an optimistic person, I think, which I try to be to my friends and family. They might not have always gotten that side of me, but now I certainly try that, because I know how valuable it is to me. Like when I have a friend just look me in the face when I'm freaking out and go, hey, you know, you're losing it. Everything's fine. Don't worry about it. You know? And I'm like, okay. And then they offer me the way it could go. And I'm like, okay, maybe you're right. You know, and they also give me the worst. They're like, okay, is anybody dead? Did your footage burn in a fire? Like
right.
No, I guess not. Okay. So what are you going to do about it? And then you got to decide to rise up and continue to slay the dragon, or you let it stop you. And I'm like, well, stop me so far, you know? So I just think you got to know that things are going to happen that are going to feel like it's the end. And I think that happens in life sometimes too. But you got to decide going in that things are coming at you that are going to feel that way, and know that you got to feel them, and then you got to reevaluate what you got. And then you go back to the, you know, you go back to what you have, and you aim it in the right direction, you know, with a clear head. Get a good night's sleep, or get a shitty night's sleep because you're freaking out. Then you wake up.
Perspective is everything, isn't it? It's all about your perspective.
Absolutely.
And from what I understand, you have, because you're a filmmaker, and you've worked with some influential people in your filmmaking process. Aren't there a few stories that you have from other projects that you might like to share with the audience?
I got killed by a cookie once.
Really? You tell.
So that's one funny thing. I mean, yeah, I mean, you don't know where you're going to land. And a big part of coming out here is meeting people and learning and being exposed to things. And, you know, I worked on some horror movies for a little while with Full Moon Features. They made the Puppet Master series, and now they're making Ginger Dead Man, which is like, he's a killer gingerbread man, and, you know, very highbrow stuff. But I was working with them, and you see opportunities to go and play and go get on a set and do something fun. And you don't know who you'll meet, or you don't know what kind of story you'll have to tell on a podcast with a couple of cool people in 6 years, you know? And in this case, you know, me and a buddy of mine I brought with, he actually got a close-up, so that was cool for him. But we all got killed by this cookie in this mass electrocution scene. That was fun.
Cool.
Nice.
But you know, I mean, I've another thing too is like you're just exposed to people. Like I've met some of my heroes out here, you know, like in passing, like working in like a, you know, like a retail or a sales environment. You got people passing through all the time, and eventually, you know, Tom Green walks in. You're like, oh my God,
Wow.
Like I love Freddy Got Fingered. I'm not afraid to say that. I love that movie. There's nothing like that movie. To me, that's a guy who got money because he made a show and it was a hit. And they're like, hey, here's 10 million. Make the movie you want to make. And he didn't hide. He did it. Like he actually made the silly nonsense that he wanted to make.
What's interesting is before Monica Lewinsky got known in the White House, she was actually on Tom Green's show at one point in time.
Is that true?
Yeah.
In Canada, his old show?
His old show, yeah.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that. That's interesting. That's interesting.
At least one.
Fun fact, I have been compared to Monica Lewinsky on more than one occasion.
Oh.
Like, people say I look like her. Like,
okay.
Fun fact. I don't know. Weird.
That is a fun fact. I'm having fun.
But did you get to meet Mr. Band while you were working, while you were in passing at all?
Yes, and it was only in passing. Like he, I don't know. It was, even though it was a very small production, and it was a small operation. I was in the office a lot, and I communicated a lot with the marketing guy who became a friend. He was inspiring. He was in a band, and I liked him. We got along. We had cool conversations. So I kind of stopped there, but I did shoot a promo thing for Evil Bong. Wait, what was it? Oh yeah, it was one of the Evil Bong movies in the beginning. I worked on 2 and 3 a little bit, but
okay.
This was like a promo that I did with a friend of mine who also works there now. I did meet Charlie, but we never became close. And also, I think I was getting to a point where I was like, this isn't where I want to be. This isn't my scene forever. And I had fun. There was one shoot I worked on that Eric Roberts was on. He was on a movie, and I was just chatting with Eric Roberts one night. I'm like, this is neat. It was like midnight or something, and was it the same project? I might be mixing up projects. I worked on a couple. But anyway, I did meet Eric Roberts on one of their sets, and that was pretty neat. But I knew throughout the course of that I wanted to make my own films. I did not want to necessarily join somebody else's thing, at least not permanently. And also, they didn't have any openings for me. They kept reusing the same, crew for the most part. And I was on the outskirts. I was PAing, or I was, doing some marketing things or stuff like that around the office. And
I understand. Eventually,
you're like, all right, let me move on. I've learned what I need to learn, and I feel like I can make a movie. It gave me inspiration to go do it, because a lot of his movies, they take place, at least the newer ones, it's like one set, and it's like, you know what? I'm gonna go make a movie with more sets. I'm gonna make a movie with a script that I'm more excited about, or But I learned a lot there. It was cool.
Ultimately, where do you hope to go from here?
To bed eventually.
No, I'm I'm talking about as in your career. Where would you like? Do you have any projects in the wings that you'd like to share, or after making the backslide?
The backslide, yeah. So I mean, to me, nothing I work on, including the backslide, is by design to be like my swan song or anything like that. Like I feel like that's a stunting mentality. So for me, it's always, hey, how's this going to lead into the next thing? Even if I don't know what the next thing is, I always have ideas in my head. I've had a few for a while, and I'm currently getting more serious about one that I've had in my brain for a while that is another romantic comedy. Might not be as over the top as the backslide was, but it's an exciting project for me. But I have other ideas too, and you never know where I might land. The goal is to try to put myself out there more this year. I really want to try to meet people who can help give me the resources I need to, take my material to a new level that I can't do on my own. Which is definitely something I understand largely thanks to working on the backslide. You do it all yourself, and you realize, like if I had three great people in some of these roles, and I had this amount of money, not much more, but if I had this amount of money, I could do it. And it's out there. And, now that I've made this film, I'm hoping that I can, show what I'm capable of and show how hard I'm willing to work to to gain those opportunities and either sell an old script, because I'd love to earn a living writing. Like I'd love to earn a living writing and make my own feature every few years or something like that. Like that's an ideal scenario. But one step at a time. Right now it's okay, I got this film done. How do I get into the next film and get this one sold or get it in front of people? So that to me is growth. So I'm trying to slay the dragon one limb at a time here, and hopefully in 10 years I'll
totally understand.
Yeah.
So, thank you for coming on, and I appreciate your candor and appreciate being able to talk to you. I know your career is just beginning, and from what Katie tells me, you're definitely not done. So I appreciate you allowing me to spend some time talking to you and giving Katie an opportunity to learn how to talk, interview someone. So
Yeah, thank you so much for that. And I just have to say that I've been very inspired by your words tonight and how you talk about your creative process and everything, because I totally relate, and I feel like even though you're doing filmmaking, which is something completely different than what I'm doing, I relate to you on so many levels, and I just appreciate you getting honest about what you're out here doing, and I feel like we line up totally in terms of our values as artists. So I really appreciate any time that I run into people who are on the same page as me in terms of making art and how to go about it, and just how to stay good people amongst all of the temptations to not be good people that goes on out in the world. And it's so important to stay true to yourself, and I just really appreciate you sharing that with us tonight.
You're welcome, and thanks for having me. It's fun talking to you guys too, and Katie, I feel the same. I think I'm inspired by seeing what you're doing, and it's, as artists, we have to support each other, I think. And I think it's important to, when somebody has a showing locally, you come out, like you did that. I'll never forget that. It's awesome.
Well, good. I'm glad I could be there. It was a little, a dream realized, like it might not have been my dream to make a movie, but I knew it was yours. And yeah, there's nowhere else I wanted to be that evening.
That's awesome. That's great. You guys are great. And David, this is really fun.
Yeah, most definitely. And I don't think you'll be a stranger. I think you'll come back and come on a discussion with us. Just kick back and relax one of these nights. So I'm not sure if I'll be able to get you on this week, but about not this week, but next week. I'll see what you're doing Tuesday evening, and we'll go from there. And
yes, let's get him on. Let's get him on for a really good, fun movie too. That I don't know what's waiting in the wings, but yeah, it'll be a fun discussion, I think.
Don't pick one that's too smart for me to be able to keep up with.
Oh, trust me, I worry about that too. And then people get to talking, and it sparks ideas in my brain that I didn't even know were there, and it's just really neat.
Something like Mother.
Okay.
I could go all night about Mother, but then again, I saw it opening weekend and I loved it. But now I'm not sure I could tell you anything about it. Like I'd have to see it again. But
definitely got to brush up.
Yeah. Okay. But I'm absolutely interested, and thank you for inviting me. I love geeking out about movies, and you guys are fun company.
So there you have it, ladies and gentlemen. This has been Adam LeHouillier.
Yeah.
LeHouillier. So definitely check out his film if it comes out anytime soon. I'm sure more than later, eventually down the line, you'll probably see it up on Amazon Prime.
Keep your eyes peeled.
I mean, you can go to www.justifiablepictures.com and see all the stuff I'm working on, including the backside, and I update the news on there every now and again. If we have like a big event, like I had my screening and I notified people that way. That's a good way to do it. You can follow me there and find the social medias that way.
Cool. And Katie, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and where you find your stuff?
Sure thing. For those of you who follow along and have heard me before, you know that I'm Katie Cadaver from Milwaukee, Wisconsin. and that I'm a body positive horror artist and alternative model. You can find me at patreon.com/Katie Cadaver or on Instagram at Third Eye Open. That's 3RDEYE0PEN. I'm also the makeup artist for horror punk band Ratbat Spider. You can listen to them at ratbatspider.bandcamp.com. And I'm a Dead Girl for Dead Girl's Dark Coffin Classics horror TV show. You can watch episodes of Dead Girl's Dark Coffin Classics at vimeo.com/DDCC. And I'm a performer and producer for Grindhouse Tees Burlesque Productions. And you can find us on Facebook at facebook.com/Grindhouse Tees. And we actually just had a show last night, so we don't have anything right away coming up, but stay tuned on the page. We will be announcing our summer show here before too long, so keep your eyes peeled for that.
Very, very cool. And my name is David Streggy. I run Inside Movies Galore, as well as write for the blog Movies Galore Milwaukee. And I'm a somewhat small-time producer here from Milwaukee. There are some projects that are coming out later this summer, maybe closer to fall. One of them being Wrestle Massacre, which I am one of the executive producers behind, and also a film from Hungary, a short film called Vulps, which is still being put together. Not sure exactly when that might come out, but that's definitely in the wings. And one of the films that I am a producer behind called Witch Town, which was directed by a director that I know from Ohio, is actually being premiered at Motor City Nightmare Fest coming up on 4/27/18 at 5 p.m. at St. Clair Theater. So definitely check that out. It's going to be in the Detroit area, so definitely keep.
I think we missed it, David. I think we missed it. Motor City Nightmares. I think that was this past weekend, wasn't it?
Oh yeah, that's right. I'm still in the.
That's okay. I'm up on when the horror conventions are. That's my theme.
There's other stuff in Detroit that you guys can go do if you want.
There's other stuff that this Witch Town is actually going to be going to be at. So definitely check and find out where they're going to be at currently. So they're still running the film festival. So definitely check them out. And if you want, you can actually still buy a copy of their film at their website through their Facebook page. So definitely check them out. In any case, folks, thank you for listening. Hopefully you've enjoyed our interview with this up-and-coming director. So definitely keep a lookout for him in the future. And thanks once again for listening to us. Like, share, and subscribe. And in any case, everyone can say good night.
Good night.
Good night, guys. Thank you.